All right, it looks like the majority of everyone is at least connected to the audio, so hopefully you can all hear me. Couple things before we dive into the actual agenda this morning. Um, I'm going to do my best to kind of watch the chat, but I can only have so many things open on my screen at one time, so I might miss a couple of things. David will be joining, and once he hops in, he'll be watching the chat and trying to keep up with any questions you might have. But if you have questions along the way, just drop them in the chat there, and we'll do our best that one of us will respond to anything that comes up in your mind. So today we are going to be talking about software updates, and primarily what we're going to be focusing on is payroll software updates. There's a little bit of the budget stuff that we'll talk about just briefly, but our focus this morning is really just going to be the payroll software and kind of what's going on with a bunch of different things that are changing or getting updated just in the payroll software. So um, this is kind of what we're planning on talking about this morning. Some update best practices. Just going to go over a couple of things that'll make your life easier when it's time to do updates for the software. We're going to talk a bit about bugs and some bug fixes that are ongoing. We've got some icy and PERSI things to talk about. And then I'll briefly mention the annual report because that's the next big thing that's coming up in the pipeline for you all as you get through your audits and your IC and everything else that a business manager has to deal with. The annual report's kind of looming over your head too. So we'll briefly talk about that as well. Um, so let's dive into update best practices. And these are just a couple of quick, easy tips, like I said, to make your life just slightly easier when it comes to downloading the updates. And we know that updates for the payroll, the budget, the AV report, it's not like a typical update process, or at least a more modern process where you click a button and it just kind of does everything for you. Um, we are working towards automating the process a little bit for the future, but for the time being, it's still the same old download the files and copy them to your computer. But here's a couple things that will make your life a little bit easier. Whenever you get an email from us that mentions that there's an update available, download the whole folder. So I know in the past we've often, said sometimes you can just download the application file. Sometimes you just need to update the DLL files. Uh, with the speed that we're making changes and updates to the program, the best practice is just download the whole thing. It's going to be a lot easier for you if you just copy all the files every single time we tell you that there's an update. And consequently, copy and paste all of it. After it's downloaded to your computer, even if it seems like on the surface not a whole lot has changed, because we're making so many updates and we're trying to do it pretty quickly, it's best just to copy all the files every single time, even if it doesn't seem like there's something that's changed that's not visible to you. And one other thing I would really mention here is we don't send an email out every single time we update the program. And the reason for that is we don't want to be spamming your inboxes with updates all the time. There are some, weeks where we'll do two or three updates. And a lot of times it's just small bug fixes that one or two people encountered and they're not really all that impactful. And most of you probably never even see some of the bugs that we've been fixing. But when we do fix a bug, we always create an update to the program, but we don't always send an email out if it doesn't seem like something that is going to impact all of you or a majority of you. However, on our share file server, we have a feature where you can be notified anytime we upload new files. I would really encourage you or have your tech person sign up for those emails. Whenever there's a big update, you're going to get an email from us, and we're going to talk about the version, what we've updated, probably host a webinar related to that particular update. But in between those times, there are other small little changes that we're making that we may not just send an email out. So I would really encourage you sign up for those emails. Those might be a little more frequent. There are weeks where you could get two or three of them as we work through bugs and fixing things. But then you'll at least have a notification that we're uploading things to the share file server. So again, nothing earth-shattering here, no groundbreaking information, but these are just a couple of things that make your life a little bit easier and help you be aware of when there are minor updates that might need to happen. And for those of you that are keeping up with the updates, you'll notice that sometimes we send an update email, we tell you what the version number is, and then by the time you download it, we've already changed the version number. And that just means that we've done a couple of bug fixes along the way. So uh, getting those extra little notifications can kind of keep you up to speed on what's going on. And again, if you don't do your updates yourself, have your tech person sign up for them. That's a pretty common uh, thing, an email for them to receive. And then I mentioned it just a second ago, but we are working on automating this process a little more for the future, meaning that if we can get everything right, you won't have to log into our share file server, and you won't have to download the files manually. We're looking at a way to try to basically a one-click update. It's a lot of work. It's a little tricky, but we suspect that that'll make your lives even easier if we can nail it down and make it work. So, and just to to keep everybody honest, we're looking at sometime early next year before we think we're ready to roll something like that out. It's just a lot of things that we have to get organized and in place to ensure that we don't screw stuff up for you. So there's some update best practices. Now let's talk about bug fixes, and this is we're going to spend a bunch of time on this. Um, because there's a lot of really interesting things that we're working on, a lot of things that we're fixing, and some important things for you guys to be aware of as we work on fixing some bugs. So, what are some things that we're working on? For a bunch of you that are in here, I know we've talked to several of you about dates. One of the biggest things that we're working on in the payroll program right now is bug fixes centered around dates. And we're going to talk about why this is a problem right now, and what we're doing to solve it once and for all. Um, and we're also going to talk about a bug with some IC assignment dates, which is what helped us realize that we need to do some additional work here. So let's talk about some dates. When you think about the payroll program, any screen that you enter a date, you always enter something like this. Uh, September 25th, 25, 092525. And when you do that, you kind of take it for granted that the program is making a decision about what century you want that date to be stored in. And as computers are generally pretty good about figuring out the right thing, but sometimes it makes the wrong decision. And a couple of you have already encountered this where on the IC assignment screen, if you try to use certain dates in 2026, the program gets it wrong. And it assumes that you're actually talking about 1926 instead of 2026. Now, there are a lot of technical reasons why this happens, and they don't particularly matter for the discussion this morning. But the point is, the computer does a pretty good job, but it's not perfect. And so we realized this a couple of weeks ago, where in certain cases, you would enter a date, say 092526, and the program would wrongly assume that you meant 1926. And of course, that's completely crazy. 1926 doesn't make any sense. However, the problem is further increased because if you think about all the screens in the program, the screens only ever show the final two digits of the year, right? So when you're looking at the dates, you just see 092526. And we have to assume that the computer did the right thing and gave you the correct century, and you would never even know that it actually saved the wrong date. So if I can move my head out of the way for that last bullet point, our solution is what we're basically calling fully qualified or four-digit years everywhere in the program. And for those of you that have done recent updates in the last, say, 2 weeks, you're already seeing this happen across different portions of the payroll program. There are sections now where you see the entire year everywhere. We have to do this pretty incrementally, meaning we have to go screen by screen to make this change. And there's a lot of code that John, our developer, is rewriting to accommodate those four-digit years. But this is a foolproof solution to a lot of the date issues that have popped up over the last couple of months. And for those of you that have encountered problems with, say, leave, entering leave, auto posting leave, you've seen some weirdness in IC assignment dates. All of this is pretty much centered around this issue of only ever seeing the last two digits of the year. And again, the problem is you don't know that there's an issue until you do something like export your IC assignment file and then open it up in Excel, and you realize that it saved it as 1926. So we are working on fixing all of those dates across the entire program. Now, What does this mean for you in terms of, data entry? Because it is very convenient to just enter like 092525. It's fast, it's quick, it's easy. John, our developer, has created a pretty clever solution so that for most date fields, you can enter dates in almost any format that you want. You can do a 2-digit year, you can do a 4-digit year, and the program is going to show you exactly what year it is and what's going to get saved into your database. It's a really clever way that we've changed the date functionality. The other thing I'll mention though is with the most recent updates, you're going to notice that not every screen just yet has 4-digit years. And the reason for this is, like I said, we have to go screen by screen, one by one, and our developer has to do a couple of things. He has to make the field, he has to expand it to accommodate additional numbers, and then he also has to rewrite the code so that it will accept the 4-digit year. It's a lot of work, but in the long run, I think this makes everybody's lives a little bit easier because you're always going to know that the correct dates have been saved to the database. And so we've got most of this work done. As a matter of fact, even though we just did an update about a week ago or a week and a half ago, whenever that was, and the next day to maybe Monday, we actually have another bug fix for the payroll program related around a couple of dates. So for those of you that have emailed us recently talking about dates and wondering what the heck is going on, this is really the core of the problem, is the 2-digit year and the program doing a pretty good job most of the time of determining the correct century. But then there's that roughly, I would say 10% of the time it just fudges the numbers and gets it wrong. And of course, you just don't ever see it. So that's a lot of what's taking place behind the scenes. And now that we've got a lot of the fixes underneath the hood ready to go, you're going to start seeing the changes in the actual user interface portion of the payroll program. And like I said, if you've done the recent updates in the last couple of weeks, you'll notice that on the employee screen, every date field there now shows a fully qualified year. You see the month, the day, and the 4-digit year. That's birth dates, hire dates, last paid dates, contract dates. All of the dates that we're seeing on the employee screen have been updated that way. Um, Everything in the IC program, the IC module is updated for 4-digit years, and a couple of other places that we don't need to go one by one. What I will say is, as you do the updates, if you get to a screen that's showing a 2-digit year, you don't need to worry about it. It just means we haven't gotten to that particular portion of the program to update it just yet. So over the next, I would say, month to potentially 2 months, we're going to continue having these small little incremental payroll updates where the major change is going to be in the user interface where we fix the year so that you can see all 4 digits of the year and know exactly what's being stored on the database. So that brings up probably a couple of questions on your mind is, what if you get to a screen and you notice that the date has been saved incorrectly? The simple answer to that is you just have to edit whatever you're looking at, change it to the correct date, and then save it. The key to that, though, is you absolutely want to make sure that you are fully up to date on all the payroll updates that we've put out so far. There are several versions that you could be on where you might encounter the 1926 bug. So if you're not sure, if you're on the most up-to-date version, the easiest thing to do is just reach out to David and I. Give us a call, shoot us an email. You can look at the top left corner of your program and it tells you the version number. And what I would suggest is check your version number, send us an email, let us know what number you're on, and we can tell you if you've been fully up to date. If you're not sure, that's a really easy way to check and see what's going on. So let's talk about the IC assignment date stuff, because this is the thing that we're all working on right now, and getting that data collected and submitted up to the state. If you're one of those people who have found that the program has saved dates with 1926 instead of 2026, the IC module has a change dates function where it will let you change the date for every single employee all at once. That's the tool that you're going to want to use to make that correction. And again, you have to be on a current version in order for this to work for you, because we had to rebuild that particular tool to accommodate dates in 1926. Um, if you need help with fixing those dates, again, reach out to David and I. It's probably a 60-second conversation on the phone if you need help, if your program's fully up to date. And it's probably one quick email where we shoot you the instructions for how to use the change dates tool. And many of you have already used it before, and you likely already understand how it actually works. A final thing I'll mention about dates is that as we make these changes and we fix this kind of strange issue, it is not unlikely that you will encounter some random date issues along the way. We're doing our dead level best to make sure that they don't slip through the cracks, and we don't push them out to you as the end user. But as you all know, with despite our best efforts to test everything and make sure that they're bulletproof, the bugs still kind of slip through the cracks. Namely because there's just so many dates and so many different parts of the program. It can be very tricky to test all of them in all the different ways that they need to be tested. So, and a lot of you have done this. As soon as you encounter the bug, let us know. And the best thing that you can do for David and I is send us an email and take a screenshot of whatever screen you're looking at so that we can figure out what's causing the bug. And along the way, we may ask you to try a couple of things to see if we can pinpoint the cause of the bug. And several of you have done just amazing work in helping us troubleshoot the bugs, figure out what's going on. And we really, really appreciate that. It's really helped with quick fixes for things that have potentially large impact. So if you encounter a date bug, don't be surprised. This is what's going on underneath the hood of things, and we're hoping that, again, about a month, we think, maybe two, we'll have all of the dates completely ironed out, and they won't be a problem at all moving forward. But if you encounter one, just let us know, and we'll do our best to get it fixed as quickly as we reasonably can. So that's what's going on with dates and why many of you have seen some weird date things over the last several weeks or maybe even a month or two. We're just trying really hard to get this correct, nailed, and right so that we never have a situation in the future where the program gets you the wrong year. So we're working on that. All right, we're going to keep moving on. That's the big bug fix. There's some other bug fixes along the way that we've implemented, but I really wanted to talk about the dates this morning because I know many of you have seen the date issues. They've caused potentially problems for you, and I wanted you to know that we're working our dead level best to try and iron them out as quickly as we can. So, all right, let's talk about ICEE and PERSI updates. So we'll start with PERSI because that's the big one. As most of you probably already know, PERSI sent another email late in last month where they updated this timeline again. So the last time we held a webinar, we shared a timeline. We even sent out an email a couple of weeks ago before this updated timeline, and then the timeline is updated again. So this is the current timeline as I have it, as I think you all have it from PERSI, and they basically shifted everything back another month or two. Originally, they were going to do employer setup in October. That's been moved back to November. And then the phased launch was going to start in November, but they've shifted that back to December. So we're doing our best to watch this closely. We're trying to keep track of anything that PERSI changes with the timeline and make sure that we are aligning our release of the new PERSI transmittal files kind of with when they're actually going to let you guys start the setup and the kind of confirmation pieces that they want all of you to do. So we're keeping track of the timeline. So what does it mean for the software itself? Obviously, if you've got a recent update of the program and you've done your PERSI transmittal, you actually are already seeing in the interface some new buttons for the new transmittal stuff. We haven't enabled those buttons yet, namely because we don't want anybody to get confused with which thing they're supposed to be doing at this particular moment. One of the things that's really challenging is that we actually have to support both the old file transmittal and the new file transmittal at the exact same time because of the phased launch, meaning in December, they're going to move some of you, but not all of you. And unfortunately, we can't know who's going to get moved and when. So we have to build the tool in a way that lets you as the business manager have access to both tools so that you can build things. You can build the transmittal file, either the old style or the new style based on whenever Percy decides to move you. So here's kind of our timeline and what we're looking at. We're finishing up a few development issues with the new transmittal file and how the program creates them. We've been using Perzy's validation tool to check our files. We just have a couple more things that we've got to iron out and make sure they're just 100% correct before we feel comfortable enabling the stuff for you all. In the next couple of weeks, we are going to have another payroll update, and the new Persy transmittal file options, they will be enabled. So when you go to build your Persy transmittal, you will be able to create the old transmittal file or the new transmittal file if you want to tinker around with it. And when that happens, when we flip the switch and enable all those options, we will send a mass email to everyone and letting you know, A, the options are turned on. We'll have a couple of help articles ready to go so that you know how to use those tools. And that way, whenever you start engaging with Persy, you have everything that you need to create files, any testing that they want from you guys as business managers. You'll be ready to go with that. And one point I will make, a couple of weeks ago, we sent out an email saying, hey, we're going to do the file validation. Persy let me know that they're going to ask all of you to do an additional file validation. Meaning, even though we're testing the files, we're using the tool to check everything over, there will come a point where you engage with Persy and they are going to ask you specifically to generate a file from your school or district and have that and do some testing with it. So just a point of clarification there. We thought that we would be able to handle all of the validation pieces for you, but Persy said that they're going to have you all do your own validation as well. So just be aware of that. That's one little change from the email that we sent out a couple of weeks ago. We're really close to turning this on. One of the main reasons that we keep holding back is just the timeline keeps shifting, and we're really doing our best to avoid any kind of confusion around what you're supposed to be doing and when. So that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of our timeline. At some point, we just have to kind of flip the switch, and regardless of what Percy's timeline is, we're just going to turn the features on. So hopefully the timeline doesn't shift again, but if it does, you're all going to have access to the new features. All right, let's talk about a couple of other things related to the new Persy transmittal file. And I'm going to show you the payroll program here in just a second. But one of the things that is an absolute requirement for the new Persy transmittal is that all of your employees need to have a unique ID number. And we've talked about this at the last webinar, so I'm not going to go super in depth. But one of the reasons we can't use location payroll number is that it's not immutable, meaning it can change. You know, if you have multiple locations set up in your payroll program and you have people that move around, you will change their location, which consequently changes their location payroll number, and then you kind of have a little bit of a mess on your hands when you have to upload your Persy file, because then you have to manually update the stuff for the employee. It's not ideal. So we ruled that out, no location payroll number, because it can change. So we decided to use the EDU ID field. This is one of those things where the EDU ID is issued by the state. It shouldn't change as long as the employee is employed at your district, and you're already using it for, you know, IC related stuff. So what we've done to kind of help speed some of this up, we've moved the EDU ID field to the employee screen. And again, if you've done recent updates, you're already seeing this on the employee screen. And this is really important. Any employee that gets reported to Persy, even your audited employees, will need to have an ID number, and it can't be their social security number. Persy will not accept the SSN as a unique ID. So a couple of points that I'll clarify here. The EDU ID field, you can literally enter any 8 or 10 digit number that you want in this particular field. You don't necessarily have to go grab the Idaho EDU ID from the website. You can do that, and I would highly recommend that you do, but you could also just make up numbers for all of your employees as long as they don't change. Not super advisable, but you could do it. The main thing is between now and the next couple of weeks when we turn on the Percy functionality, I would highly suggest, if you haven't already, gathering those ID numbers up for your employees and getting them added into the payroll program. Because what you don't want to have to do is when Percy migrates you to their new system, you don't want to have to spend a bunch of time entering the ID numbers before you can do your transmittal. So now is a really good time to start that process and go to the employee screen, add an ID number for them, and just save it. That'll get you a really good portion of the way there in terms of being ready to go when we flip the switch and turn the functionality on. And again, keep in mind, you cannot use their social security number. Percy will reject that and won't let it go through. Let me switch my screens really quickly, and I want to show you in the payroll program what this all looks like, because there's a couple of other things that we've added because we've opted to use the EDU ID. So let me move my sharing to this other screen here. And this should be the payroll program. There we go. Okay, so we're looking at the current version of the payroll program, and I apologize, this is going to be really a little laggy as we load things through Zoom. And I've just got some dummy data here. And what you really want to look at is kind of in the top right corner here, we've added the EDU ID field, and this is completely editable from this screen. Just like everything else on the screen, you just enter a number, press save, and you're good to go. It's also a really good example of where you're going to see the 4-digit years populated across all the different date fields that you can see on this particular portion of the program. So EDU ID, top right corner of the employee screen. And again, I would start adding those numbers now and maybe even do it kind of incrementally to the point where do a couple at a time, get them added, that type of thing. But this is where you're going to make that change. Consequently, because you edit the EDU ID on the employee screen now, one of the changes that could be a little annoying to you all, you just have to let us know. When you go to the ICEE screen, you can see the EDU ID, but you can't edit it on this screen any longer. And the main idea behind this is we want to have one source of truth for employee information. We don't want to have that information scattered across multiple different parts of the program. So previously, the EDU ID lived here on the ICEE screen, and what we're hoping for now is that employee information, it specifically resides in what we'll call it an employee profile, right? You go to employees, you look at their profile, and that's where you make and update all of their information. So you can't edit the EDU ID on this screen any longer. However, that said, if that's super annoyance to you, let us know, and we can maybe give it some thought as to how we can potentially make your life less annoying. But for the moment, that's kind of how it works, is all employee information gets modified on the employee screen. But again, let us know how you feel about that if it seems too much of a problem. Now, one of the things with ICEE was when you add an EDU ID, the program assumes that you want that person to get added to the file exports. So what we had to do was add an additional checkbox that allows you to exclude people from ICEE reporting. By default, this is checked for anybody. So here's an example. This person does not have an EDU ID, and the exclude from ICEE is checked. So if they have an EDU ID, the box will not be checked by default. So it'll save you a little bit of work. But as you add EDU IDs, you're going to want to just make sure that you have the correct people excluded. If in fact you have somebody going to Percy, but they don't need to go to ICEE. And there almost certainly will be a couple of those folks. But the point is you have the ability to explicitly exclude them from any kind of ICEE reporting just with a quick checkbox. So you, just like everything else, you edit the employee, you can check or uncheck the box, and then save their information. So that's what's going on with that. Those are two of the biggest changes as it relates to your ICEE reporting. Is you have this new checkbox that excludes people if you want to exclude them, and the EDU ID is not editable on this particular screen any longer. So other than that, everything else as it relates to Icy is 100% the same. You still have your demo data, your 2 tabs for that, and then your Icy assignment data. And everything else functions 100% the same as far as your exports go and that type of thing. One thing I will mention, and this was in the email that we sent out a couple of weeks ago, there were some updates to the course codes, the assignment codes. There's a couple of new school numbers. The school numbers probably won't affect most of you unless you've added a new school and got a new number issued by the state. But the SIP codes might be something that you need to update. So let me switch back to my other screen here. And there we go. Yeah, we just talked about the Icy updates. And the final piece of the Icy update puzzle is that the SIP codes, the assignment codes, and a couple of school numbers were added. Those are the Icy files that kind of just hang out in your payroll folder. Every single one of them, it just says Icy dash, CIP codes.csv. Those are what need to be updated. We include those in the share file download. So if you go to our share file and you download everything, those files are already there. They're already updated with any updated codes and whatnot. Don't have to do anything special to get that. Just download the payroll update, copy the files over to your payroll folder, and you're good to go with the new assignment codes and the CIP codes, the SIP codes. So, and again, most of you probably aren't going to need those, but I would suggest that you update just in the small off chance you actually do. The CIP codes, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of them, and this year there were maybe 10 changes across the multiple hundreds of lines of CIP codes. Same thing with the assignment codes, hundreds and hundreds of lines of assignment codes. And I think there were maybe 10 or 15 changes, and 90% of them are still identical to what they were before. So, however, if you get an error from Icy when you submit the file related to the assignment codes or the CIP codes, it could be because you haven't updated the files just yet. So just keep that in mind. And again, if you follow the best practice of just downloading everything in the payroll folder all at once, you already have the update and you're good to go. So that's what's going on with Percy and Icy. And again, I know Icy is due here real soon. If you are having trouble with the assignment dates or exporting the files or anything related to Icy, let David and I know. We can probably help you solve it pretty quick. Most of the resolution is going to be just get updated to the most recent version of the program. So that's kind of what's going on with those. Let me check oh yeah, we're doing great on time. All right, let's talk a little bit about the annual report because that's the thing that's kind of hanging over your head. So you've got your audit stuff going on, you've got your Icy stuff. Hopefully, all of the audits going smoothly and you're moving through that with minimal pain. But we also know that you got the annual report coming up here real soon as well. The good news is there's really no changes that on the software side as far as creating and generating your annual report. The process of doing that is functionally the same. And last year, David and I created several help articles related to producing the annual report. And I just want to point those out once again today, namely because it has everything that you could possibly need to get yourself a paper copy of the annual report and generate the electronic file that needs to go to the state. And a couple of tips on this. Highly encourage you to go to our help center, support.i2mfinance.com, and review specifically anything related to the annual report. We've got a long, I'm not going to go over all the articles, but we've got a nice laid out step-by-step process for printing the annual report to paper, or if you prefer, you can save it as a PDF so you can review the numbers. And the biggest tip that I can give all of you is take the time to get yourself either a PDF copy or a paper copy to review all the numbers. It is 10 times easier to identify if there's an issue if you have that in front of you. It's a lot harder if you're only looking at your electronic file. So check out these articles and follow the steps. And let me just show you the electronic file. And what we've done is basically outline everything that you need to complete before you generate your electronic file. Right down to, reviewing the annual report before you send it off to the state. This is probably one of the more complex reports that you have to produce, namely because you're also required to do the federal percentage allocation stuff, and it can be a little confusing. So we've created articles to help walk you through how to do each one of those steps. So just as an example, when you're getting ready to generate your electronic report, we have these 4 things that you want to do prior to ever creating the electronic report. And then we've created the articles that walk you through how to make sure these things are done correctly and accurately. And then, of course, we have the step-by-step instructions for how to generate the annual report. This is hopefully a really clear way to walk you through the process. And I know part of the problem is you only do this once a year. And so these are not steps that you've got memorized down to every minute little detail. And so we try to create an article that gives you everything that you need to know along the way as far as generating the report and getting it, sent off to the state for them to review. So definitely check out those articles. And again, as you're generating the report, if you have questions or trouble getting the numbers to look the way that they look, reach out and let us know, and we can try our best to provide a little bit of guidance on how to get things correct and accurate. We even created an article. I don't have it on the screen any longer, but we created an article with some common problems for the annual report and how to solve them, and that walks you through some of the most common things that we see when people are trying to create the report and how to fix them pretty quickly and painlessly. All right, so that's the annual report. We may talk about that, a little bit closer to the annual report deadline in another webinar. But I just wanted to throw it out there that there's already some resources available to everyone if you plan on getting a head start on gathering some of that stuff. I know we've got a couple of folks in here that like to start some of that stuff early. All right. One final thing that we'll talk about, and we've been talking about this for a while, is our modernization of all the applications. If you've downloaded the payroll program in the last month or so, you've already got the beginnings of a modernized payroll program. And what we mean by modernized is you'll notice just the buttons look a little different, where the text looks a little different. We're slowly moving our way towards implementing kind of what modern Windows applications look like. The payroll program is pretty much there. We're continuing to make incremental updates along the way. But for those of you that are updating, you'll notice the budget program and AB report don't share the same modernized kind of user interface. We are currently working on the budget program, and I'd say we're probably somewhere between 50 and 60% of the way through with all the modernization of that program. And I'm guessing within the next 3 months, we'll have that fully complete. And so you'll get an update with a modernized budget program, or at least the beginning stages of the modern user interface. For AB report, we're taking a little bit of a different approach in that we don't want to make any changes during the time where you're making important reports to the state of Idaho. So you won't see a modernized AB report until probably early in 2026, just by nature of us not wanting to tinker with something that produces, a massive, in most cases, 100-page printed report that has to go to the state. So we're working on AB report, but much more slowly, so that we don't introduce any bugs to the reporting process. So keep your eyes out. Budget will be available soon in a modernized format. AB report early next year, probably in the modernized format. And once we've modernized all three applications, and just to stress what modernization means from the development side of things, at this point, John, our developer, has made somewhere in the realm of a couple thousand code changes to the payroll program to get the things fully modernized. Um, and so it's a long process to shift from kind of the older Windows styling to the newer Windows styling. And it's just a lot of code that he has to update and change. But we're getting there, and we're making good progress. And once we've got all three versions fully modernized, we're really going to focus on some significant what I don't know if you want to call them process improvements. Making things a little easier to navigate as much as we reasonably can. Hope everyone has a fantastic rest of the day. If there's anything David or I can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out, give us a call, shoot us an email, and we are always happy to lend a helping hand.